Emma Norris, buon pomeriggio. Hi Emma, how are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. So, yes, so far you're the only guest that I've had that's turned up today.
Yes, unfortunately, sometimes it is like that. We get close to that festive period, and also with the heat outside at the moment, oh my goodness, it's so hot outside. It's ridiculous.
Yep, indeed. And we're broadcasting on Facebook Live, if anyone's watching on Facebook. So I've said in announcing you that you're an administrator here at the radio, and you're a language student.
I
guess there's two big topics.
Two big topics for today. I like it. It's good.
So tell us, when did you start? We'll talk a bit about what you're doing here at the radio.
In terms of the radio? Yeah, sure. So I only started working here as an administrator about a month ago. I got the position thanks to Antonio Dottore, actually, for sending I believe it was you, wasn't it? Yeah. Sending it on to my university lecturer, who proceeded to post it in our university page for any students who were doing language, because he's obviously a language teacher, who might be interested in the opportunity. And so I do have another job, which was my first job. I work in a butcher shop, which I know is very surprising for a young female student, but I do enjoy it a lot, actually. Not necessarily the work, but the community. I'm a big community and people person, usually quite good with my social skills and such, especially for my age. I'm only 20 years old. But yeah, for that, I love the community. And so the opportunity of getting to upskill into an office job for me, from a butcher shop to an office, is crazy. And then also having the opportunity to be able to speak in a language that I am learning, and be surrounded by that, because as somebody who is an Australian and doesn't have any Italian heritage, doesn't have any close Italian friends who speak the language fluently, what it means when I'm trying to learn a second language is that it's really impossible for me, outside of having full immersion experiences and outside of the classroom, to learn and to be able to speak fluently, because I'm not challenged. I only have a 3-hour class a week, and then, there's plenty of uni holidays. I've been on uni holidays since the beginning of November. So what it means is that I don't get the opportunity to continue to push myself. And so when this job opportunity came available and I got the opportunity to upskill, not only upskill, but also practice what I'm currently learning at university, I jumped at it. And thankfully, the fantastic general manager that we did have working here, who's now unfortunately gone on maternity leave, Diana Carboni, she gave me an opportunity, I guess because she said that she saw herself in me when she was a little bit younger, because she was also about my age when she started her own business.
Okay.
And so being young females, I guess, in this industry, she understood what it meant to me, this opportunity, not only to upskill as an administrator, and take on all the skills of sales and marketing and social media and doing all of the accounts, like little stuff, all of the amount of the different opportunities that I get and all the different skills that I would learn here would be absolutely incredible for me moving forward. And so she gave me the opportunity, and so far it's been fantastic. I did mention earlier, I'm a big social and community person, and the community here at Radio Italia Uno, very much thanks to Diana, has been incredible. Everyone's so welcoming, and I love the big community base that we have here, and I'm hoping to really work very hard to get it to grow bigger, especially with people who aren't necessarily presenters, people who are looking to volunteer, and then also just the general community as well. I'm hoping to grow it very much.
Yeah. So in fact, you reminded me that I did. So Diana put out a call for staff as well as call for volunteers, and I thought to Stephanie, well, maybe this could be interesting to one or some of your students.
Yes. And, which is thank you for that, because you got me a job. It's very helpful.
Yeah. So good, and I'm happy that you become involved. So you mentioned social media. You're doing some social media stuff. You're doing accounts. And you're interacting with sponsors.
Yeah, I'm doing it all.
Lots of work.
Yes, definitely. Wow. Yeah, it's a very big job to have, and it's a lot. Don't get me wrong. But I'm a person who loves a challenge.
Yes.
And I'm very passionate, especially about the Italian community, especially about the Italian language. And so I'm more than willing to step up and do absolutely everything, and especially with the amount of upskilling that's necessary, like it's really helpful for me. So I'm more than happy to be here. I'm very excited actually about the future and the direction that the radio is heading in. And I'm very excited by the opportunity to help out with that.
Cool. So, yes, lots of work, but are you part-time or full-time?
Part-time at the moment, only about 20 hours,
Mm-hmm.
which works really well for me because that's what I was doing when I'm at uni, is about 20 hours of casual work, which right now that I'm on holidays and I'm working 2 jobs and I'm giving them probably pretty much equal time at the moment, I'm a little bit, like we're getting to that period of time where I'm very, very busy, which is good at the moment, but given that I am looking at leaving my other job in the new year, which has been really good, but I wanted to help them out and train up a couple of staff before I left. I didn't want to leave anyone in the lurch. I'm somebody who loves to help out, so I was never going to leave them in the lurch. So yeah, I'm currently working 2 at the moment, both of them quite significant hours, but I'm very much looking forward to that period in January where I can relax a little bit and leave my first job and really start focusing on the direction that the radio is going to be heading in the new year. Focusing on bringing in some more sponsorship, bringing in some bigger membership, hopefully setting up some community events, some community raffles. Yeah, Dan has done a fantastic job at setting up and fixing any issues that we had with the station and the admin part specifically. And now the only way forward is forward, you know,
Yes.
because the only way forward is growth, essentially, and so I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, cool. 2 jobs, so you're busy.
Yes,
you
very.
don't get much time to watch the cricket or whatever.
No, I'm not really a cricket person, I have
Yeah.
to say. I know I'm Australian, but cricket, to me, I'm sorry if I offend any of the listeners, is a bit boring. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. It's just so long. It's so long. But I do, like my family, especially around Christmas time, we do play a little bit of backyard cricket,
Uh-huh.
which to me is a lot more fun. I guess because I get to be involved. But watching the actual Australian cricket, with especially the big bash and all of that, yeah, not really my thing, unfortunately.
Okay, well that's fine. We can deal with that. I don't watch much cricket either, to be honest. So that's cool. Now you've mentioned languages a couple of times, and that's how you got involved. What language? Where are you studying? What level are you doing?
Well, I've just finished my second year. I'm doing an undergraduate, a Bachelor in Languages at the University of Adelaide, which is now Adelaide Uni as of 2026. In terms of that study plan, I'm not quite sure how it's panning out with Adelaide Uni yet. Unfortunately, the merger's been a little bit of a mess, is my understanding. And so a lot of the study plans haven't yet to be released. However, I am aware that they have changed the name of it to a Bachelor of Arts in Languages, of which I'm not sure if I should be mentioning my views on that, but not too happy if I have to say so, because if we're gonna really talk about my opinion on this, I don't think the issue is, as somebody, I studied very hard in school. I'm quite a good student. I was always very motivated, very, very passionate person, especially about the things that I am passionate about, such as languages and arts. But because I did really well in school, there's kind of an expectation for me to follow down a path of science or law, and those are, when you do well in school and you end up with like an ATAR that's quite high, like I did, there's always an expectation for you to head down a certain route. And I didn't do that. I headed down the path of an arts degree because that's what I was passionate in. And I've found since doing that unfortunately there's a lot of stigma around arts degrees. And whilst I really wish that there wasn't, it is the truth. And I think an issue with that is that moving into the university, because a lot of what they've done is they've categorised each degree into an area. So now, like for example, my partner who's studying veterinary sciences or vet tech, he has now become a Bachelor of Science in Veterinary Technician, which to me is like, I don't, it's a bit clunky. It's a bit, and for me, who's now going to be considered a Bachelor of Arts, majoring in languages instead of a Bachelor of Languages majoring in Italian and Spanish, because those are the 2 languages I'm doing. To me, all of a sudden, as much as I don't want it to be a stigma there, I feel like I'm going to get essentially prejudice regarding that, unfortunately.
Okay, so you said you've just finished your second year
Correct, yes.
of undergraduate, and which languages are you studying?
I'm studying Italian and Spanish.
Okay, very closely related language.
Very closely related, especially somebody whose first language is English. And I've studied Italian for my entire schooling career. So, I mean, we did a little bit in primary school. I wouldn't say it was a great level of education because primary school is very, very basic. But I did it all through high school and I really enjoyed it then. And so that's why I continued it on. And then when I chose to do the Bachelor of Languages, because I wasn't entirely sure which direction I wanted my career to head in, I just knew that I didn't enjoy a lot of the science subjects. I decided to just essentially pick my favourite subject, which at the time was Italian, and go down the go down the path of that degree. So now, I mean, I am looking at doing, now that I've kind of settled into my degree, I am looking at where this is leading me, which is probably to teaching, to doing a Master of Teaching, or maybe doing some work in interpreting, which I know you yourself do, or your brother does.
Yeah.
Something along those lines. We'll see where that leads me. But yes, I picked Spanish because I have such a long history and love for the Italian culture, the Italian language. I picked Spanish because of the reason that it is very close. I thought that would mean it would make my life a little bit easy in terms of picking it up, but also because I knew the culture can be quite similar, given that they both come from, you know, the Latin Romantic languages side. Their cultures would have a lot of similarities, also because obviously they both have a big influence from the Catholic Church. I knew that their cultures would be quite similar, which I thought would mean that it would make it more easy for me to fall in love with them, and therefore study harder and motivate me more. And that is definitely true. I do love learning Spanish. I think the teachers at Adelaide Uni teaching Spanish are a fantastic group of young women, which I can really appreciate. They do a fantastic job in terms of setting up the course, teaching. They're very passionate. There's two ladies, sorry, one of them left now. Both fantastic, and actually they've done a lot of work in setting up some extracurriculars for us to do. So in terms of getting extra credit, we had like a volunteering activity to do during the Latin American Film Festival. That was really cool. We also had the opportunity, they got a little grant from the university and we went and tried Spanish food as a class. That was pretty cool as well. Not to say the Italian teachers they are also fantastic, the amount of time and effort that they put in as well. But the Spanish teachers made me fall in love with the language as well as the Italian teachers. But it is difficult studying two languages that are my second and third language that are very similar, because the crossover I find that knowing Italian makes it really easy to learn Spanish.
Yeah.
And also because obviously Spanish, because I hadn't done Spanish until a year ago, I hadn't started it, we went back and did all of the basics, which reinforced all of my understanding of the Italian language.
Yes.
And in terms of reading tasks and reading comprehension and all that, and understanding verbs and the way that they all work, I pick it up so quickly because it's so similar to Italian. My biggest issue is when it comes to speaking and listening. Mm-hmm. So listening is really difficult to me because in Spanish, some of the syllables are pronounced very differently to both English and Italian. Like for example, in Italian, if you have a C and an E, it's a ch sound. Mm-hmm. And in English, obviously, that's a CH sound. But in Spanish, it's a th, like it's a TH. Yeah. And so that's really confusing because it's like completely rewriting my idea or my image of what C has been for my entire schooling and education. Like I've always known it as either the Italian version or the English version. But now having it in a third version it's really hard for me to pick up. And then also with the speaking component, because I've been doing Italian for so much longer, I often revert back to it. But also, everybody, I think a majority of people who speak or are trying to learn a second or third or fourth language will always tell you that speaking is the hardest part, because you have to be really reactive and proactive to what somebody is saying to you. You don't have the opportunity to sit down and think about it in the same way that you do if you're listening or if you're writing, if you're doing an examination, of course. If you have to do an oral, I mean, at a university level, we're not allowed any notes or anything. We just talk, we just have a conversation, which is very reactive and proactive. And so without being able to separate my languages very well, what that means is that when I have an oral examination or I just have to speak in what I often will revert back to one or the other, to the words that I know better. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So yeah, it's really good. I love both of them. The thing is that now that I've done Spanish and I fall in love with the culture, I can't imagine not doing it. I can't imagine. I think I would still continue to pick Spanish as my my third language every time, because I do love the culture now. But I can definitely understand, and it is definitely probably harder to be doing a language that is as similar to the other language that you're learning versus, for example, doing like an Asian language, because that would be, I would class that as being a little bit easier to separate, at least in your head, whereas these Spanish and Italian is very difficult.
Yes, that's an interesting approach. I've been thinking about picking up another language, and at first I thought I should go for a Northern European language, because they'd be very different. But apparently that's not different enough in terms of exercising your brain, and maybe I should go for an Asian language. Yeah. But then I thought, I could even try to learn an Aboriginal language.
Yeah. How many languages do you speak?
Well, Italian, English. I understand and speak a reasonable amount of French.
Yep.
And I understand Spanish.
Yeah.
So they all interact and reinforce each other. Yeah. Okay, now let's have a short break. We'll have a song, Sabato Italiano, and then we'll come back to speak to Emma Norris of Radio Italia Uno Adelaide. Now, you mentioned doing Italian at school through the years. Which schools?
So I went to Stradbroke Primary School. I'm from the Atherstone North Trevor area, and so I went to Stradbroke Primary School, which we did Italian there. Very, very basic level. I was talking about this with a friend earlier at university, because we were discussing the future of teaching and the future of education in South Australia, and we were talking about the fact that we don't think that there's enough. And this might be being a little bit too political as well, but in terms of the curriculum, the languages curriculum in primary school, it's important enough that they have it, but in terms of what we learnt in primary school, it's basically, I think there really should be a larger push towards teaching languages earlier, because there's so many studies that will show how much kids pick up in terms of languages, and everyone knows how fantastic learning a second or third or fourth language is for the brain. It's amazing. That's right. It's incredible what it does. And I feel like there really does need to be a larger push in terms of primary school education, because all I can remember is learning like the colouring in the maps and doing colours and numbers, and that was pretty much it for. And I mean, we did Italian in primary school. I'm at least 3/4 of primary school. Like, it might not have been reception in year one, but that's still another 4 or 5 years, of education that we basically did the same thing every year. Might be a little bit political, but in my opinion, I think there needs to be some improvement there. However, I did do it in primary school. I then also continued into high school. I went to Norwood Moriata at the time, which is now Norwood International. I went there because a lot of my friends from Stradbroke were going to Norwood International, or Norwood Moriata at the time, because a majority of Ross Trevor, which is where Stradbroke is, was zoned for Norwood, which is the local school. Now, because I live in Atherstone, I was actually zoned to Charles Campbell. So in order to get into Norwood, I did the Italian immersion program.
I was going to say, they've got that interesting program that I've been meaning to talk to either the principal or the Italian teacher about that.
Yeah.
So how does that work? You do several subjects in that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I can't quite remember how they advertised it, because I thought it was also several subjects, but what I completed was, it's called the Italian Immersion Program. Essentially what it was for students who had done Italian in primary school and wanted to do what they call a special interest program in order to get into the school. So there's a set amount of places that are available, and then you apply for them in order to get into the school, and then you need to go with a teacher recommendation, which I asked my primary school teacher for. It was really good. I got a place in the Italian immersion program at Norwood Moriata High School. And that allowed me to attend the school, which was really good because otherwise I was out of the zone. And Norwood was at the time, still I believe is a very popular school. And so getting places, especially when you're out of the zone, was a bit difficult at the time, hence the special interest program. So the Italian immersion program was fantastic for me for a few different reasons. Firstly, when we were in Italian class in the Italian immersion program, it was all taught in Italian. Which I know might sound crazy, but in primary school they still speak English. They just, do the counting of the numbers and the colours. So jumping straight from year 7, where we're doing still numbers and colours, into a full-blown, she's only speaking Italian. I think she might have done the introduction in English in the first class, and that was it. The rest of it was all in Italian. And her just slowly, using her hands to describe what she was doing, meant that we picked it up so quickly. And that teacher, her name is Miss Tooley, she was fantastic. There were quite a few kids, especially ones who weren't necessarily always passionate about language, who didn't like her because they found her a bit strict. But as somebody who needed motivation, and as somebody who, you kind of do need to, especially for learning another language, you kind of do need to be thrown in the deep end, especially when the jump between primary school and high school can be so varied and so different. So she was fantastic for the Italian immersion class. We picked everything up so quickly. And then what the special interest program essentially did was it also taught, it was what we called humanities, which is essentially history and geography, all in Italian.
Yes.
And so not only did we learn in Italian the content, but a lot of it was also on Italian history and Italian geography and such. So we learned about all of the all of the regions, we'd do all of the maps and such, all in Italian. We'd learn about the First World War, but from the Italian perspective, all of that sort of stuff. And I think it was a really fantastic program in terms of it really encouraged and it brought together a group of people from various different primary schools. It brought everyone together with a joint appreciation for Italian language and Italian culture. It was really good at building confidence. And then also another topic that I will mention, but I need to go back to something first, is that it also gave us the opportunity to actually visit Italy when I was in year 8, which was fantastic. Nice. But the thing I did want to mention about the special interest program, which whilst it was fantastic, especially for me as somebody who is really passionate about languages, what I will say is I do think it caused a little bit of a gap in some of the other stuff in terms of the curriculum. Because we were learning all about the Italian perspective of things, what it meant was that we missed out on a lot of the Australian stuff, which I believe that there is an importance for both, but because it wasn't like we were learning both, we were learning one or the other. Yeah. Like either you were in a normal humanities class or you were in the Italian immersion one where we learned about Italian stuff. And what it meant was I actually missed out on education, or it was very, very brief in terms of, for example, the Aboriginal perspective of stuff. I missed out on a lot of that, the discussion over, the genocides and when the first boats came, because they touched on it briefly in primary school, but not to enough depth and not to the level that, because we have the ability to remember a lot of information about what we're learning, it just doesn't stick unless you continue learning that sort of stuff and continue exploring. But because I jumped to doing the Italian perspective on like the First World War, the Second World War, climate change, politics, but it was all Italian focused. I missed out on all the Australian stuff, which I think it was good for me as someone who wants to pursue an Italian focused or Italian community focused career. But for other students who maybe didn't go down that route, which there was like 25 of us, I think. I'm sure there's plenty of other students who didn't continue down that route, who missed out on their education, which I think is, a little disappointing. But going back to the study tour that we got to do, thanks to Norwood and doing the immersion program, we got first preference. So if our parents agreed to us going on the study tour, then all the immersion students got first preference, which was really good. So I very thankfully was part of that. My parents did allow me to attend. I was only 13 at the time. Okay. We went in a study tour, I believe, off the top of my head, it probably would have been about, probably maybe 25. But of people who were my age, there was only 5 of us. So there was 5 year 8s. The rest of them were a majority of year 10 students who I believe were all like 16 is the general age, and I think there was 2 year 12 students. But that was really cool. We got to go to, we spent, it was for 2.5 weeks. I think it was in around September. We spent the first, say, week and a half, I think, roughly, touring around. So we did Rome, we spent like 3 days in Rome and Napoli, and we went to Florence. We actually spent a day in Siena as well, which we'll touch on later because I did a study tour there as well last year. But then, yeah, so we went to Florence, then we went up to, we stayed in Milan, I think, for 1 night before we went and stayed with homestay families, which was another fantastic experience. So I got to stay with a homestay family who I'm still in touch with, actually.
Beautiful.
In Torino. And yeah, beautiful, beautiful city. If any of our listeners have ever had the chance to go to Torino, it is gorgeous. I still dream of Torino. It's so beautiful. But yeah, we got to stay with, and we were assigned a family each. And I'm sure you can imagine being a shy little girl who's only 13, going into a little Italian family on the other side of the world for my family, was a very, very scary experience. But if I could do it all over again, I 100% would. I mean, there's certain elements of it that I regret in terms of I wish I had done more, but because I was quite quiet and shy at the time, didn't have that social skills built up yet. I mean, we weren't even allowed jobs at that time. I was 13, you know, we weren't doing anything by ourselves. Everything was with family. I wish I'd spoken more. I wish I'd spoken more to them when I had the time with them, because I spent a lot of time you know, reading a book or being locked up in my room, which I really wish I'd spent more. It's one of the things I regret most. But still, the fact that I was able to do that with my, I'm so proud of myself for being able to do that, because that was incredible. But yeah, no, spending that time immersed with that family, we went out on day trips together, they showed me around, I met some of their extended family, I went to my homestay sister's, her dance class, that was good fun, they did like a salsa lesson, that was fun. We went on group trips back to Milano, we did all sorts of stuff, we attended school as well. That's the important thing to note. We did attend school whilst on this school trip. We went to I can't remember the name of it. This was, it was 2019, so what's that, 6 years ago, so I can't remember every single detail, but we did attend school for most mornings at the Turin school with our homestay siblings and just followed them to their classes. That was really eye-opening because I think not only were classes taught in Italian, which, I mean, I was only 13, I just finished, I hadn't even finished my first year of high school yet, so my understanding of Italian language was very beginner level, and so whilst we didn't really understand anything in classes, it was still fascinating to see another culture, and seeing like mathematics and being taught to such a different degree. Yes. I mean, the difference in education and curriculums is insane. But yeah, it was really, really cool. We went and played sport. Also, the differences in cultures of just high school students was insane as well. Like, we'd step out and there'd be kids smoking on the steps, and we were all looking at each other like, I can't even. I'm 13. I don't even have a job, let alone smoke a cigarette. That's crazy. And then we were only in school for the morning, and then we would go out with our teachers whilst our homestay siblings stayed at school. We'd go out and do activities that they planned for us. We'd go to the museum, or we'd go to this lookout, and it was a really amazing experience. I was very shy at that point. It taught me a lot of independence and being on the other side of the world from your family, and being like having to interact with a family who doesn't speak the same language as you when you are only 13, and the girl who I was staying with, she was an only child, so there's no sibling. She spoke English very well, but her parents didn't speak English very well, especially her mum. And yeah, trying to find things in that are the same, or you know what I mean. Trying to find things that you can talk about is very difficult when you've only just met somebody at the bus stop and now you're suddenly in their home and you've never met them before and you don't speak the same language. It was very difficult but very rewarding, and that's what started, I think, my passion for languages. It's what got the ball rolling, and then obviously I continued languages all through my high school, a lot of students, it was a requirement until year 10. A lot of students dropped it in year 10, but I actually, Norwood had a program, it doesn't exist anymore, we were actually in the last class for it to exist, called 10X, which essentially was an accelerated study program for students of year 10 who were doing really well. And as I mentioned before, I was quite a studious student. Since that trip, which I happened to go on with one of the Italian teachers, who also happened to be, I think, the languages leader of the school. She actually put me forth for, and nominated me for the 10X program, which I wasn't necessarily an A+ student, but maybe like an A-, B+ kind of student. I definitely put myself out there, but I think that trip, because of how much I grew over that trip in terms of my confidence, my independence, my passion for language and culture, my teacher saw something in me during that trip and decided to nominate me for this accelerated program, which once again pushed me further in terms of my independence and my confidence. And honestly, I cannot thank her enough for doing that, because I'm not sure I necessarily, I'm big on opportunity. I'm not sure I necessarily would have had that opportunity if I hadn't gone on that trip, because I grew so much. And then so I started 10X, which essentially was, we moved, because Norwood at the time was 2 different campuses. I'm aware now that it has merged. So when you were in years 8, 9 and 10 were on the Morialta campus at on St. Bernard's Road, and then years 11 and 12 were on the Parade at the old Norwood campus. And 10X was essentially one class out of, Norwood's a very big school. I think there were 10 to 12 classes. It's a huge school per year level. It was one group of students, I think we were once again 25 students, something like that, who went over to the senior campus and mingled with all the 11s and 12s away from our own year level. And what we did was, we did half of our classes, I can't quite remember exactly which classes, but half of our classes were at an accelerated year 10 level, which essentially was somewhere between, in terms of the curriculum, somewhere between a year 10 and a year 11 level. And then half of our classes were year 11 students. We were mingling in with year 11 students, and so we were all split up, which I think was also good, because it meant we weren't as secluded. We were secluded from our year 10 grade and the rest of the year level being on a different campus, but being able to intermingle with the year 11s as well meant that we weren't just one class. We did get the opportunities to be independent with and have other friends who were year 11s and such. And it was a requirement of that to continue Italian, which I would have done it anyways. But I did stage 1 Italian in year 10. For those of you who don't know, stage 1 is the SACE equivalent of year 11 Italian. It's the name that they use to refer to that. I finished stage 1 Italian. I believe I ended up with a merit in that, which was really nice, being the best student in that class at the time. And then I actually decided, Norwood at the time was looking at bringing in IBDP, which is the International Baccalaureate Diploma Program, for those of you who don't know, which essentially is, I had done IB in primary school and in the beginning of high school, but then as soon as I'd started year 10 and I'd done stage 1 subjects, which is now SACE, Norwood only did IB up until year 10, I believe. And so I'd done IB in primary school, but nothing would prepare me for what IBDP looks like, which is the year 11 and 12, the SACE equivalent. Not the SACE equivalent, it's not SACE, it's IB, it's the international equivalent of SACE. But yes, I decided in year 11 to do IBDP, which was definitely an interesting experience. And the reason I say that, it was really good. It was a really good curriculum. I'm pretty confident I would do it again. If I had the choice to do it again, I would. I would definitely recommend it to students who are like myself, who jump at opportunities, are passionate, motivated, and willing to put in the work, because it is a lot of work. However, my situation was pretty unique, because we were the inaugural class. So we were the first ever class to graduate from Norwood with the IBDP. And that was an amazing honour, but it was also extremely difficult, because not only were we learning the curriculum and learning how everything worked and learning the assignments and the way that IB would grade everything and all of that, but so were the teachers. And that made it a really unique experience because we grew very close with our teachers on a personal level. I mean, I still talk to some of my teachers just off, outside of work and outside of their schooling and such. And I was out with coffee actually with my old theory of knowledge teacher a couple of weeks ago. So we still are very close in contact. But my point is that it made it very difficult because it meant that we really struggled in terms of being able to achieve the highest we possibly could achieve.
Yeah.
Because we were under such a time pressure. So IB is a 2-year program. We study the same curriculum all the way through the 2 years, and then there's a big examination at the end. And then there's also one assignment per subject, which is what's called an IA, which is a big research task per subject, one per subject. And it was really difficult doing an assignment that is a completely different style to the SACE ones in terms of everything. Like it's a different writing style, it's a different assessment style, it's a different referencing style. Everything was different. And because it's the first time the teachers have done it, there wasn't a lot of things that we could reference.
Yes.
There weren't any examples. And the teachers have never done it, so the feedback that they were giving us was also feedback that they were drawing from any little courses that they had done and any little advice that they could get from teachers in Sydney and teachers in Perth. But if it still made it really difficult, you didn't have anybody to rely on. I mean, I ended up doing well, but it wouldn't have been, I don't think it would have been to the same degree of how well I would have done if I had done SACE, because the other thing is IB, not only is it such a huge workload, but it also is, SACE is only 4 subjects. IB we did 8. It's literally, not only is it twice as hard, but it's also double the workload. So it's completely different in terms of the amount of stuff that needs to get done, and you need to push through over 2 years. And then the fact that the final examinations are worth like 60% of your grade is also huge pressure. And those are the European style of exams, where the exams we were sitting were 2.5 to 3 hours long. Like it was insane. But I'd still do it again because the amount I grew in those 2 years, both personally and professionally and academically, it prepared me so well for university. It prepared me so well as a person to brace and take on the new world, to get out of high school. I think I'm a far better student and far better grown woman now thanks to IB. So I would continue it. But my point was that I had to do Italian as a part of that, and I would still do Italian anyways. But yeah, I did continue Italian all the way through. Unfortunately, Italian I did do high level. So for those of you who don't know, when you do IBDP, you have to do a subject in all 6 of the all 6 of the learning areas. So you have to do an art subject, you have to do a language subject, you have to do your first language subject. So for example, we have to do an English subject, so you could pick like the different types of Englishes, whether you want an analysis or a literary, that sort of thing. You have to pick from the maths, the science, etc. And then because there were 6, you had to pick to do 3 at a standard level and 3 at a higher level. And when you did the higher level ones, you went into more detail on certain topics, and there were actually even extra topics or extra work that you had to do. For example, in English, we had an extra paper that we had to do. For maths, we had an extra examination paper that we had to do with an extra 3 topics added on to that. So it's a lot of work, but I ended up doing Italian, HL, high level, which actually, unfortunately, was one of the only, there was only 2 subjects out of all of the students who did IB with me, which there was only 11 of us, so it formed a really small cohort actually that also got really close. But it was one of the only subjects that finished in May. So in IB there's 2 examination periods, either May or November, depending on whether you're in the southern or the northern hemisphere. And unfortunately, being that we are in the southern hemisphere and Italian is a language from the northern hemisphere, so a majority of the students who study it are all in that area, we had to line up the examination dates. So I finished Italian in May of 2023. I had my final examination, which was for my IBHL Italian class, which was a 2-year course that we did in a year and a little bit. And I did a HL as well, so there was extra topics and extra examinations for me to do, and it was an absolutely momentous? No, that's not the word, you know what I mean, but it was a great big effort to get across the line, and it was very difficult, very grateful I did it though. It really pushed me actually to my limit. It was very difficult. But my point is that the task that I took on in doing that, I received a very high certificate thanks to I got the Dunstan Award for my school, which was a certificate for, it was best student in language, culture and excellence in languages, which I was very appreciative of. It was given to me by the Premier of South Australia, I believe. At our graduation ceremony. It was and I also got a merit in Italian from my school, which, given that we graduated with 280 students, it's a very high honour, and I really do appreciate Norwood for that. But yeah, it really certified, or I guess, it really it checked all my boxes. I knew that I wanted to continue down this path, even though it wasn't my best subject overall in terms of the grading that I got. The situation that I was in when I did a HL subject in a year and 3 months, basically, and challenged myself and pushed myself so hard to the point where I wound up with the honour that I did wind up with. The grade didn't matter to me. It was all about the passion.
Cool. So you don't have any problems in talking nowadays?
Oh, you'd think that. You'd definitely think that. I was talking to somebody about this at the radio a couple of weeks ago, actually, and they were asking me about my story. And whilst my story is full of all of this language education, I have to reiterate that as somebody who's an Australian without any Italian background, any Italian friends, anyone to speak to outside of a classroom and to push and challenge me to speak, as somebody who is typically a shyer, more timid person, it's impossible for me to be fluent yet. Yeah. I agree. I think my Italian has come a long way, especially since starting uni, because the uni curriculum is so much more fast-paced in terms of it, and because you have to remember the other thing, given that I finished in May 2023, we didn't start uni until March the next year. It was basically a year between my two lots of Italian education, and so I did drop a little bit of it because I didn't continue to practice it. I wish I did. It would make my uni transition a lot easier. Anyways, that's beside the point. I wish I did speak better than I do. I think my understanding is pretty good, but my being put on the spot is not too good, which is why we're doing this interview in English.
That's okay. But the shyness has gone.
Yes,
yeah. And the quietness. Now, we're going to talk about the trip to Siena.
Yes.
We do have another guest, but let's talk a bit about Siena. And then maybe we'll get hold of Mick, and maybe you can chat with Mick too.
Okay.
So, tell us about this. So you did the study tour. So we're going to talk a little bit about the study tour in Year 8, and now the study tour in
Siena.
Yes, what, second year of university?
First year of uni.
First year of uni, okay. Yeah. So how did that go?
Which one?
Siena.
Oh, Siena. Siena was beautiful. So for listeners who don't know, I got the opportunity to go and study at university in Siena during my first year of uni, which was absolutely fantastic. It was because of a grant that was given by the South Australian government to, and I'm not sure on the specific details here, but it was given to the Italian language community within the University of Adelaide and UniSA, I believe. No, Flinders, sorry, my mistake. Flinders and UniSA. And as somebody who is a Uni of Adelaide student, but studies cross-institutionally for Italian at Flinders, because unfortunately at the time Uni of Adelaide does not, or did not have, I guess, the facilities to have an Italian, so they have a partnership with Flinders. Anyways, so I thankfully did get the opportunity, despite being a Uni of Adelaide student, to go on this trip, which was a grant given to, I guess, help improve a young group of students, and there was also a separate group of teachers that went in later not this year, but the year after. They went a little bit later, and because the university that we were attending in Siena called University for short, refers to it's the University for Foreigners of Siena.
Sì.
And it teaches. It's a fascinating university for me because it's everything that I'm passionate about. It teaches Italian to foreigners.
Yeah.
And it teaches Italians and also foreigners, but how to teach Italian to students who don't know Italian, or how to teach Italian to foreigners.
Yeah.
And to me, that's fascinating because that's everything that I want to do. I'm a foreigner learning Italian, but also I want to be a teacher of Italian.
Okay.
And so it was a really cool experience for me in particular. But that's beside the point. We got the opportunity to go on this trip. I went with some of my friends from my Flinders class. We also met some students from the Uni SA classes. It was students of all different backgrounds, students of all different, comprehension of Italian and understanding. I mean, my friend group, we were all mostly intermediate level, which in uni is essentially, I guess, second year, because I'd done Italian high school, we jumped straight forward, which is really nice. But I had a couple of friends who were of the beginner stage, but because it's uni, it's actually it moves very quickly. So you have to think that the beginner level of uni, which is only 1 year, is the equivalent of 5 years of high school Italian. It's true though, it's like the amount that they understand in 1 year is pretty equivalent to what I understood after high school. And we had a great time. We got the opportunity to go. Let's keep in mind that this was a grant, so we were actually our tickets were all covered, our flights were all covered, our food was covered, our accommodation was covered.
Okay.
Pretty much everything except for your personal shopping was covered, which was really, really great and really appreciated. Oh, and of course of any travel that you wanted to do extra. And the trip started November 23rd. I even remember the date. November 23rd, and it was 2024. So it was a really, really good trip. We got on the flight. We got into Rome, and then got on after the very, very long travel day that it is. I think it ended up being like 26 hours. It's ridiculous. We were so tired by the end of it. And then we get on a long bus in the middle. It wasn't the middle of the night, but it was dark outside, so everyone was sleeping on the bus. It probably would have been about 6 p.m. We get on the bus for the 3.5 hour journey through the hills, the winding hills to Siena, which is beautiful if you haven't just been on a 26-hour flight day. It was hot. We were all, I swear everyone was dying. It was a long bus ride, let me tell you that. Anyways, we got to our hotel, we all settled in, and then we got to go to uni. And uni was really cool in Siena because we sat in classes with students, and because it's University, so it's all foreign students pretty much, we sat in classes with students from quite literally everywhere. There were students from countries in Africa, there were students from Asian countries, there were people from Spain, there were people from Venezuela, there were people, I met an American student. Everywhere you could think of, we had students in that class. And it was incredible because the only thing we had in common was Italian and our passion for Italian language. And so the way that the uni, or at least these teachers, structured the classes was that you do a little bit of work out of their textbook that they put on the screen, because obviously the Australian students who were just there for a short term didn't have it. So thankful for that. But then we would sit and have a discussion about something, and the discussion would go off on some tangent, but the purpose of it was to interact with each other. And to discuss the differences and the similarities between our countries. And so I remember one time we were talking about celebration days or something, because they just told us about Ferragosto, which I know very well, but some of the other students didn't know. And then they'd go around and ask, what's a important national day for you? And go around and we'd learn all about these different days. And this is all Italian because that's the only language we can all communicate in. And I think that's really unique because in Australia, and even as an Australian going to Italy and having been to Italy twice now, it's very easy to speak English there. Obviously I don't want to because I want to learn Italian and I want to become fluent, so I don't choose to, but the option is always there. There's always signs, there's always things for you to read, and remember that English is okay too. This class, English was not okay because half of them didn't speak English anyways. So our communal, anything that we could communicate in was all in Italian. That was the normal. And that is so strange because English is, it was strange to be put in a situation where English actually felt like my second language, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Because you couldn't revert to it. And so I finally understand, I guess, as somebody who doesn't have any heritage other than English and Scottish, so I don't have another language. I finally understand what it would be like for immigrants coming to Australia and being forced to continually speak something that almost comes a little bit unnaturally.
Yeah.
Like you kind of have to keep pushing yourself, even just to have a basic conversation over a cup of coffee or something. But I understand what that was like now because I got to have that experience in Siena. And it was beautiful because we got to learn all about, and it was also fascinating because we got to teach about Australia. And so many people, like anytime people would ask us where you're from, if they heard us speaking in English and we have an accent, obviously being Australian, people would ask us all the time where we were from. And it was so cool because when we tell them we're from Australia, which to us comes very naturally and very normal, and we forget that Australia is so far away from everything else, and so many people still believe that it's kind of like a fever dream. And so that's really funny because anytime we'd say, oh yeah, we're from Australia, they would turn around and go, oh my goodness, it's so far away, I didn't know it was real. I thought it was on the bottom of the planet. So that was always really funny. But yeah, it was always cool when we got to teach about Australia. One of my favourite moments was when we were talking about modes of transport or how we get to uni, or that's our daily routine, I guess. And I brought up that because I'm from the northeastern suburbs, to coming into the city, I will often use the O-Bahn. Now, South Australia and Germany are the only places in the world that have an O-Bahn.
Correct.
And so trying to explain in Italian, which is not my normal language, that we have a bus that goes on tracks like a train. However, it can also go on a normal road in Italian was crazy, and you should have seen all of their faces. It was very entertaining. And then we pulled up a picture of it, we explained it a little bit better, and they got there in the end. But they were fascinated by the O-Bahn, which I find really funny because it's just so normal to us now.
Yeah.
But no, it was really cool because there was a couple of countries. There was a girl from Ukraine, and there was a couple of people who were from various African countries. So people from countries that don't always have access to everything. And so I think also having that first-hand experience with people, which as somebody from a very privileged community, thankfully, I don't really have that sort of interaction. And getting to have that interaction with people who don't always have access to everything was also so beneficial. Like one-on-one, it was so beneficial, and it really opens your eyes. Not only does travel open your eyes, but also getting to interact with people like that is fascinating.
Okay, so we'll say thank you for Emma for telling us all these stories about her trips and her studies and the Italian and the Spanish.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, we'll go on to our next guest. Maybe you can stick around and have a chat with him because he's talking about the Aboriginal curriculum.
Oh, yeah.
The next guest, Michele Scarcella, is Indigenous, Italian Indigenous. Okay, so now we'll introduce him with Ed Sheeran and Andrea Bocelli with Perfect Symphony. So goodbye.